Hey, this is Chris for jamplay.com, and welcome to Fretboard Roadmap. We're in our 4th week, and this week we're starting on C. And we are working on consecutive picking as our sequence, and we have yet another new track to jam over. But if you've been tracking with us for the first 3 weeks, this week is gonna be the same, except for we're introducing another scale and another way to play it. So without further extrapolation, unless there are any questions or comments right off the bat, we're going to get going on the scale position. We're going to get into the sequence. Then we're going to warm up a little bit with both of them. And then we're going to practice over the drone. Then we're going to apply over the track. So should be a pretty cool and streamlined evening. Are there any comments or questions on any of the previous weeks? You guys have been doing a great job. There's been quite a few people that have submitted badges and done an excellent job. Just great job preparing, great job with the videos, and great job playing. They've sounded really, really good. So it's fun to be able to see those and react to them. Anything before we get going?
Nothing in yet.
Okay.
Maybe a few seconds here, we might get something.
Let's pull up the scale pattern. Starting on fret 8. So here's our G, A, B, C, D, E, 8, 10, 12. Then we have 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. 8, 10, 12. 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. Then 9, 11, 12. 10, 12, 13. 10, 12, 14. So let's take it up a couple times. This pattern is not as, there's not as many duplicate things on strings going on. It's a little bit less, there's a little bit less pattern in the pattern than some of the other ones. But that's okay. Once you practice it a couple times, you'll get it. 8, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. 8, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. So there's 2 9, 10, 12s in a row. 8, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 11, 12, 10, 12, 13. So those are the same there. You're just moving them up. Then 10, 12, 14. Again, up slow. Eight, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 11, 12, 10, 12, 13, 10, 12, 14. And then back down. 10, 14, 12, 10, 13, 12, 10, 12, 11, 9, 12, 10, 9, 12, 10, 9, 12, 10, 8. Whole thing at a moderately slow tempo. Okay. You know the drill. And so on. There's some really cool musical things that can happen, as with all these, when you start on C in the key of G. And so we'll be getting into that in a little bit. Are there any questions or comments before we get into the sequencing side of things?
Mixolydian was wondering if you could possibly do a count in when you
that's right.
play the scale or the sequence.
Yep, thank you. I did that last week. Thank you for reminding me. I'll do a little bit now. We'll do that same tempo range again. Thank you, Mixolydian. So I went from 80 to 100. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. One, two, three, 4. Up to 90. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. $100. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Let's see, one from Studio here. Why consecutive picking?
Well, we're going next. We're going next to consecutive picking, right? There I was doing alternate picking. Instead of a sequence that's unique to, that's, you know, jumbled up notes or something, we're going to do consecutive picking on this sequence this week. Consecutive picking for particularly 3 on a string scales is kind of cool. It's cool all the time. Or in certain situations it's cool, certain situations alternate picking is probably better, but consecutive picking is neat on 3 in a string scales or notes with, or patterns with 3 or odd numbers per string, because if I'm picking every note, I'm able to pick in the direction of the scale. So if I play this really slow, consecutively picked, and you can refer to the tablature here, the consecutive picking one, the sequence. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm playing up the scale, so I'm going higher. If I go 8, 10, 12, I'm going down, up, down. And then if I was alternate picking, the next line would have down, up. So it would be down, up, down. Then it would be up if I was alternate picking on the next string. So you have a little bit of extra work in that you're going down, 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 up, down, up, down, up. But if I do consecutive, I go down, up, down, down. So if you look at this hand, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. It's a bit more efficient with the motion, and it allows you to be, I don't know, I mean, in some cases maybe faster, but if you, I'll do it slow again. Oops. That's why. It's just a different way to pick. It's a different, it's an efficient use of motion, because you're picking in the direction of the pattern. And then if I turn it around, I start with an upstroke. See? Up. So I'm going to go down, or I'm going up the scale. So. Up, or back down. Oops. There's a couple things to keep in mind when you're doing consecutive picking. Number one, your muting feels a little different, because you're going in the direction of the scale. You don't want to be off the strings, but it's harder to mute when you're consecutive picking. I don't exactly know why. I think it's because you're transitioning strings a little bit faster, and you're not able to move the wrist in quite the same way. That's okay. It's easy. It's easy to get over that. That's consecutive. I find consecutive picking on the way down to be less efficient, at least when you're doing large things like this. But I love consecutive picking on the way up for something like this. So that's why consecutive picking. And that is also why I'm glad you asked that question. Okay. So it's just, there's 2 different ways to play it. You can work it with the click, consecutive and alternate. We're not doing a unique sequence this week at all. So
we got a question here if you'd
yes,
like to take one real quick.
Yep.
This one is from Patrick. I can't for the life of me get past 100 beats per minute error-free. That goes also for A or B, any of them. I flub when I mainly switch from half step, whole step on a string to whole step, half step on the next string. Am I doomed? My alternate picking is okay. And he also said something else. Let me add that in here. Sorry about that. This happens when I'm going up the scale. Down is no problem.
Huh. Am I doomed? My alternate picking is okay. So the error is just in fretting the notes? It's not a picking error, it's a note error?
That's what it sounds like to me.
My guess, if it's a note error but your alternate picking feels solid, then it's simply a matter of getting more familiar with the patterns before you try to push speed. If you were feeling like you were having trouble with hand synchronization, in other words, you got to a certain point, at 100 beats per minute, your hands aren't able to keep up with each other. That is, could be dealing with mechanics, posture, tensing up, stuff like that. But in this case, if it's a note problem, in transitioning from maybe string to string note-wise, I think you just need to spend more time with the patterns at a slower tempo. And once you have the muscle memory at a slower tempo, you'll be able to blow right past 100 beats per minute once you know the scales. But I can't play anything I don't know that well fast at all. I have to make sure that I've got the muscle memory down at a much slower tempo. I hope that helps.
Okay. I think that's caught up on the questions for now, yes.
Okay. One, 2, 3, 4. Consecutive picking 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. And so on. And you're going to feel, once you start getting, for me, once I start getting above 100 beats per minute on this, there's just a better range of motion that happens. It feels, particularly when you're doing shorter stuff, like if you're doing something like just these two or these 3 strings. Practice going up that. The consecutive picking is really, really cool for that. It feels good. So practice that up. Let's take it to the drone. let's be a bit creative. Now, if you remember, right, the drone is where we focus on note names and how they sound over the C. So we're focusing on how the notes in G sound over the C, and we're naming our notes. We're being conscious of the note names. Yes.
Can we get another picking question in real quick?
Sure.
Before we move on to the drone
absolutely.
there? This one is from a Handsome Scout. He's watching on YouTube. At what speed does it morph into sweep picking?
Ah, good question. Sweep picking is not dependent on speed. Sweep picking is a form of consecutive picking. But sweep picking usually includes one note per some strings. So if I'm doing this arpeggio, I could play this arpeggio alternate picked. I could do it like that, or I'm alternate picking. But I've got several, I'm outlining an arpeggio and I've got several notes that are on one string. So if I'm doing an alternate picking, I'm wasting a lot of energy. It's actually very hard to do. This is a form of consecutive picking, but since I only have one note per string, it ends up being a sweep, like this. And you can do these nice, grace sort of notes like I just did there. I have a lesson on sweep picking in my phase 2. But there's all sorts of really neat, like this is a major 7 arpeggio. You can do some really neat things with it because your right hand isn't working that hard. And you can pretty much sweep any sort of arpeggio, like an arpeggio based off of the A-form bar chord. Minor. But that's a little bit outside of this scope of the lesson because that's not 3 string scales. But that's how you would get started, or that'll whet your appetite a little bit for some sweep picking. But go check out my phase 2. I think I do a few lessons on sweep picking. And then there's other guys that are even better at it than I am. Emil Wursler on the site is incredible sweep picker, as is in consecutive picking, Andy James, his series. Whew, good stuff. Any other questions there?
That was it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're going to go to the drone. Should have just left those on. Drone. What note is that? That's an F sharp. That's a very strange sounding note. An F sharp over a C. Sharp, G, A, B, C. There's my F sharp. F sharp to G, F sharp to G over the C, F sharp to G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, E, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, fun stuff. I really like playing with this scale over the C. And that F sharp, that's part of being conscious of your note names. It's going to help you memorize the names of the notes on the neck for sure. But even more important is that ear training, is understanding why certain tones sound the way they do over certain tonal centers. It's a huge part of spanning the neck and being useful in terms of playing over different chords, playing over different sounding music. Any other questions or comments?
Not yet.
Okay.
So if you guys have any, just go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll get a extended Q&A here in just a little bit.
I'm going to play over the drone again. I'm going to be conscious of my notes. I'm going to start by moving a little slower, and then I'm going to get into some of the same stuff I was doing. Okay. So the natural progression from here is to take it to the track. In the key of C, totally built for this. there you have it. Starting on C, over C, with the drone, with the track. And if you noticed, I pulled a few of the sequences in from the previous weeks. I was doing some alternate and some consecutive picking throughout that whole thing. Practice up on the alternate and consecutive picking. And have fun with these tracks. This is a fun one. They're all fun. Next week's fun too. Starting on D is really fun as well. So that's all the content I have planned for tonight. If there are any questions or comments, they're more than welcome.
No questions right now, but you guys, if you have some you want to get in the chat box right now, and we can get to those pretty much right away. So I'll give you a few seconds here and see if anybody's got any comments or questions. Meanwhile, we'll watch Chris drink water, which is always exciting.
It is much more entertaining than playing guitar.
What are some songs that you can think of that kind of really accentuate this sound that maybe people could listen to?
Well, the biggest one that's obvious would be "Flying in a Blue Dream" by Joe Satriani. Would have this sort of flavor, and it's cool because it changes actual keys too, in addition to keeping with this sound. There's a lot of vamps that, when you think about C in the context of G, C is the 4 chord. And so anytime you're hanging out on a 4 chord, before you resolve to the 1 chord, granted you're playing the same scale, right? It's the same notes. It's just that you've shifted your center for a minute. And if you treat the scale as though C is it, even though you're going to eventually go back to G, it creates this sort of uneasy, major 7th kind of sound. It's really a neat feel. And playing live, there's lots of opportunities to do that kind of thing where, maybe you're jamming out and then right before the end of the song, instead of going to 1 right away, it's like 4, and then you can, play around solo-wise and build up the anticipation for the final descent to the 1.
Don S. just wanted to say thanks. Said it sounded very good here.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, guys, thanks for tracking. I look forward to more badges. Warming up. Hey, and definitely jam out to the track some this week. For those of you who are submitting the badges, I'd love to hear your interpretation of the playing over the specific track. So, well, next week we'll be starting on D. We have a very cool sequence to work on next week. Are there any more comments or questions? Looks like there might be one coming up.
I think that is all the comments that we have.
Okay.
Oh, hold on here. Let me check on YouTube real quick. I think I just had a couple come in. So kill some time for a few seconds there.
Okay.
Handsome Scout says the drone C F sharp sounded quite like cashmere or something on a sitar. I play by ear and I'm slowly learning notes.
Yeah, it does sort of sound a little bit like that. Very good observation. You've got a good ear.
Got another one coming in here. One second.
Mm-hmm.
Rob D. Birch says, scary word. Is it Lydian mode? There's a playlist on Spotify, songs in Lydian.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I think that's it.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We're doing our best in this series not to get too deep into the theory. If you guys want to, but learning the tonal center approach to playing these 300 string scales is absolutely the right way to approach learning modes. Absolutely the right way. We're not going to do that in this course. This is where we're going to stop, because if you don't understand this and understand it well for all the patterns, you're never going to get how to play with modes, how to use modes. So, good observation. You are correct. This is the Lydian sound. We'll see you next week.